Thank you so much for joining us today for our Edith and Peter O'Donnell Awards information session. My name is Stephanie Shaw, and I serve as the Program Director of TAMEST, the Texas Academy of Medicine, Engineering, Science, and Technology. We really appreciate the time and effort that's put into preparing nomination materials, and we hope that the session provides you some information to help in creating a successful nomination. We're excited to share with you additional details about the process and timeline and answer your questions. We're especially excited for the awards in 2026 because this year marks 28 years since the awards were first given. This will be a milestone year that will recognize and celebrate the transformative impacts the O'Donnell Award recipients have had on science and society. For our information session today, we'll go through the purpose and objectives of the awards, the timeline, and the awards committee. Then we'll talk about the categories and eligibility criteria, the scoring criteria, what the committee looks for in an application, and then the nomination guidelines and materials. And we'll finish off with a Q&A. You'll have an opportunity to ask written and verbal questions during the Q&A. Please feel free to write in the Q&A box during the session, and then we'll answer them at the end. A bit about TAMEST. We're a statewide society with a mission to foster collaboration, nurture the next generation of scientists, and advance the research enterprise in Texas. We were founded in 2004 by our honorary chair, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, and Nobel laureates Michael Brown and Richard Smalley. TAMEST is composed of more than 360 Texas-based members of the three national academies, the National Academy of Medicine, National Academy of Engineering, and the National Academy of Sciences, along with other honorary societies and the state's 8 Nobel laureates. I'd also like to thank our 2025 annual conference presenting sponsors, Briar Capital and Lyda Hill Philanthropies. I am now pleased to introduce the chair of the O'Donnell Awards Committee, Dr. Margaret Goodell. Dr. Goodell is a professor and chair of molecular and cellular biology at Baylor College of Medicine. She's a member of the National Academy of Medicine. She's also the first O'Donnell Awards Committee chair that's a past recipient of this award, and she's a prime example of the talent and drive that we look for in selecting recipients. She received the O'Donnell Award in Medicine in 2011 and was inducted into National Academy of Medicine in 2019. So I'll pass it over to you, Peggy.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here. And it's hard for me to believe that it's been 20 years that this has been going on. And I think it's really been an impactful program. So welcome to all of you again, and thank you for your interest in nominating a Texas researcher for this important award. As I was saying, I think it's been impactful broadly in the state, and certainly it was impactful to my career. I was very fortunate to receive one. The Edith and Peter O'Donnell Awards annually recognize rising star researchers who are addressing the essential role that science and technology plays in society and whose work meets the highest standards of exemplary professional performance, creativity, and resourcefulness. So 5 awards are given out for 5 categories: medicine, engineering, biological sciences, physical sciences, and technology innovation. The awards are named in honor of Edith and Peter O'Donnell, who were steadfast supporters of TAMEST since its inception and incredible advocates for the excellence in education and research, particularly in the state of Texas. We are fortunate to support this program, this awards program, through the Edith and Peter O'Donnell Awards Endowment, and grateful for the generous ongoing contributions from many additional TAMEST members and supporters of the organization. To date, there have been more than 80 recipients of the award, 16 of whom have gone on to be elected into one of the national academies, and several of them, 5, hold dual academy elections. Recipients of the award each receive a medal that has a distinct pattern reflective of the category they were selected for and a $25,000 honorarium. There's also a professional video that's created during the lead-up time to the award, and it highlights their research. And also the awardees have an invitation to present their research at the TAMEST annual conference. The TAMEST 2026 annual conference will be held February 2nd to the 4th, 2026 in San Antonio this year. If selected, the recipients must be able to attend the O'Donnell Awards ceremony and their research presentations at the TAMEST conference. Nominations for the 2026 awards open February 1st, and they'll close at 6 p.m. on April 30th. So we still have some time for that in 2025. The review and selection will take place in the spring and summer of 2025, and we'll be talking about that in a little bit more detail. The recipients will be publicly announced in December 2025, and they'll be recognized at the TAMEST 2026 annual conference that we just mentioned in February. So once the nomination window has closed, nominations will be reviewed and ranked by the O'Donnell Awards subcommittees. There's a subcommittee for each one of the awards. The subcommittees then meet and review their aggregated rankings, and then they select finalists for external review. The nominees' packets then are sent to external review to people all over the country. They're reviewed outside of Texas, and they are usually National Academy members or similar outside of Texas. Following the external review, they send their comments back. The committee gets together again and discusses the review and the rankings that are given by the outside reviewers. And then the committee selects a recommended recipient in each of the award categories. The recommended recipients are then submitted for review and endorsement through a Texas panel of highly lauded individuals that includes Nobel laureates and laureates of the Breakthrough Prize. And final approval of these recommendations comes from the TAMEST Board of Directors. So it's a multi-step process. Recipients are notified in late August, and then there's time to prepare for the presentations in February. If a nominee is not selected, their nominator will be notified in September, and they can be renominated in future years. The O'Donnell Awards Committee is composed of 16 TAMEST members. They are Texas-based members of the National Academies, and there's subcommittees, as you can see on the slide here, that oversee the awards in each of the categories. Each subcommittee has a breadth of knowledge within that category, and we broadly encourage nominations from all research fields that will fit into one of these subcommittees. And we are really grateful for the efforts of the committee members for volunteering their time and service in this endeavor. We're also grateful for the time and service of the committee of the Nobel and Breakthrough Prize laureates to review and endorse the recommended recipients that occurs towards the end of this whole process. The O'Donnell Award categories, I want to say a few words about that. First of all, the award acknowledges the outstanding achievements by Texas-based researchers in 5 categories, as we mentioned before: medicine, engineering, biological sciences, physical sciences, and technology innovation. You must choose one category for your nominee, and these are described in detail in the nomination guide, and we can discuss this in the Q&A period if you have any questions with regard to that. Nominees in the first 4 categories should come from individuals and teams from all research universities, medical centers, nonprofit research institutes, and other scientific organizations in Texas. Nominees in the technology innovation category can come from the private sector or government. There are no restrictions in the field of research, but they must come from companies, government agencies, nonprofit research institutes, and other scientific organizations in the private sector in Texas. And if you have questions about that, we can discuss that, but you can also see who the previous awardees are, and they really run the gamut in terms of different areas of technology within Texas. Past recipients for this award have been from NASA, Johnson Space Center, ConocoPhillips, Shell, Southwest Research Institute, Texas Instruments, and more. We're really looking forward to a great variety of nominations in that category. If you're in need of guidance regarding which category your nominee should be placed in, the committee created subcategories that are located in the nomination guide. This is not an exhaustive list that you can find, but hopefully it will be helpful if you're not sure about particular categories, and we can answer some questions either in the Q&A period or afterwards also if necessary. We understand that interdisciplinary work is very common, and that can make it difficult to choose one category. Our advice is to submit the nomination to whichever category the nominee has made the most impactful contributions. So where would that nominee's achievements be best reviewed? A specific example we receive questions on is biomedical engineering and whether it's a better fit for medicine or engineering. And in some cases, the engineers may appreciate better how challenging and unique that contribution is. And in other cases, it might have had a very big impact on medicine, and that committee might appreciate it more than the engineering category. So you really have to think about those contributions for how they will be reviewed by the different categories. For technology innovation, the intent is to recognize individuals in applied sciences and engineering from non-academic institutions who have made significant new developments that have the potential for making a positive impact on society. An individual can be nominated for a single technological innovation or for accomplishments that have more broadly led to significant new technological innovations. The individual nominated may have functioned as either the driving force or creator of the innovation, or they may have led the team which created the innovation. We are looking for nominees who have led innovation and implementation in their science or technology, and their product has accomplished a successful application stage. Nominees who have made such a major technological innovation while employed in an industry environment, but who may now hold an academic appointment will not be excluded. So they can also be excellent nominees and should be considered. Okay, how are nominations reviewed and scored? Nominations are scored using the following criteria. Does the nominee address an essential role that science and technology plays in society? Does the work meet the highest standards of exemplary professional performance, creativity, and resourcefulness? And what is the level of impact or potential impact of the work of the nominee, and how is that supported by relevant metrics? And is this candidate a potential nominee in the future for one of the national academies? Successful candidates have typically made important discoveries during their independent faculty career. The most impactful discoveries influence the field, broadly influence the field, and that's one way the committees really look at it. Not just is this an amazing discovery or contribution, but has it really impacted the field? And evidence for that can come from the letter writers and the initial nomination form. The nominator statements may refer to this, but the reference letters really are critical in conveying how the work has influenced the field more broadly. And the best letters are from people in the field that are not linked to the nominee, i.e. they're not former mentors and so forth, but they can attest to the influence of the work. And the breadth of that influence is also relevant. Nominations will be ranked individually by subcommittee members initially, and then compiled and averaged to identify the top candidates for discussion. So for example, some of the committees will receive 20 or more nominations. And so it's usually the top quarter of those that are really discussed in detail by the committee for further consideration. The committee also has agreed to a conflict of interest policy. So committee members cannot nominate people for the category on which they are serving. And conflicts of interest will result in either a disclosure amongst the committee members or recusal altogether from the ability to discuss that particular nominee. Awards are really merit-based. The committee does not look at what organization the person is from or what research topic won in the previous year. And they don't talk about whether someone from that organization or field can't receive it this year. Eligibility requirements. Okay, for the academic awards, which include medicine, engineering, biological sciences, and physical sciences, the nominees must be within 15 years of their first full-time independent faculty appointment. So for the 2026 awards, that This means an appointment would have started after the calendar year 2010. For technology innovation, the nominees must be within 25 years of their first full-time private sector or government appointment. For the 2026 awards, this means an appointment after calendar year 2000. Nominees must have spent the past 2 years performing research in Texas. For team nominations, all team members must meet award eligibility requirements, and TAMEST members are not eligible. Okay, the nominators. Nominators can be TAMEST members, university presidents, chancellors, provost deans, vice presidents for research, past O'Donnell recipients, department chairs, industry executives, administrators, and managers. There's really very few restrictions on who the nomination actually comes from. A nominee cannot, however, nominate themselves, so you have to find somebody else to nominate you. If a nominee is selected, nominators are invited to participate in the nominee's research video and asked to attend the TAMEST conference and provide introductory remarks, if at all possible, at the O'Donnell Awards dinner and ceremony. Okay, so those who did not get selected can be renominated, as I mentioned, and there's an automatic rollover of the nomination for 2 years. The nominees must still meet all the eligibility criteria, including the timeline. However, even though the nomination materials can roll over, nominators are encouraged to update the materials. It's very helpful to have an updated CV and sometimes even updated letters in a nomination package. I mean, things can change fairly quickly in the fields. And it's not unusual at all for a recipient to win the award after having been nominated 2 or 3 or more times. Okay, I'm going to now turn it back to Stephanie Shaw to tell you more about the required materials and the new nomination form.
Thank you, Dr. Goodell. So there are a few changes to the nomination process and materials this year. The first is that a cover page is now required. I'll talk a bit more detail later on about what that entails. Next is that all nomination materials, besides the letters of support, are required to be submitted as one PDF document. And finally, we're using a new online submission form called Submittable. So a few things about this for your side as the nominator. It will give nominators the ability to edit and upload new nomination information after the submission up until the April 30th deadline at 6 p.m. So once you submit, you're able to go back into your account and make any changes if necessary. Nominators can also invite collaborators to work on the nomination with them. As the nominators will receive notification of the status of their nomination and be notified if they were not selected within the platform. So you'll be able to communicate with TAMEST staff directly through the platform regarding your nomination. And there's also an opportunity to request letters of support through the form. I do want to say that if a nominee is automatically renominated, this new form does not need to be filled out. But as always, we give it as an option if you'd like to create a new form. Next is the required materials. So these materials are all posted on the TAMEST website, and they're included in the nomination guide and the online submission form. I'll go through each component briefly right now, and then I'll go through them individually in detail. So like I said, each nomination must include these items in submitted as one PDF document. The first is the cover page. So the cover page will include the nominee's information, nominator's information, and then the statement. So the 50-word statement and 250-word summary of accomplishments. We'll also ask for the biographical sketch and complete bibliography for academic awards, and then for technology innovation, a list of the most important research publications, industrial reports, patents, and descriptions of contributions to company innovations. And then finally is the letters of support. Like I said, these will not be included in the one PDF. These will be submitted separately. So first I'll go into a bit more detail on the cover page. this is a new component this year. The main goal is for the committee members to have something to easily look back on when they're reviewing the nominations. So this will be the first glance for the committee. These should be formatted in Times New Roman 11-point font, and an example can be found on the screen and also in the nomination guide and in the chat box. So the cover pages will include the nominee's information, the name, title, organization, and year of first faculty or industry appointment. The nominator's information, their name, title, organization, and then the 50-word statement and 250-word summary of accomplishments. Now, these nominator statements in a bit more detail. So for the 50-word summary, this is kind of the high-level overview of the nominee's accomplishments. We think of this as kind of the elevator pitch for the nominee. This is the first thing that the committee will be looking at. So in as few words as possible, we want to just kind of point to the impact that the nominee has had in their field. And then the 250-word summary serves as a bit more of a way to go into detail. So this will include the fields in which the nominee excels or demonstrates exceptional potential, the particular discoveries or technological developments, the impact or potential impact supported by relevant metrics. And then for technology innovation specifically, we would like to see a description of the successful application of the innovation or an explanation of how the body of work led to successful applications. Just as a reminder, this is a diverse group of expertise that the members in the subcommittees have. So it's really important that these summaries are impactful to someone who may not be in the same field as the nominee. Next, I'll talk about the biographical sketch. I'll separate them out for academic awards and for technology innovation because they do ask for slightly different things. So for all of the awards, the NIH BioSketch is accepted. But the full biographical sketch for the academic awards, we're looking for a summary of education, employment, honors and awards, including recognition or awards received from the nominee's institution. A summary of the nominee's research interests and activities, including information on grant support and the nominee's role in each grant. A synopsis of the nominee's discoveries and research contributions, and statistics on papers, books, and reports. And for technology innovation, these can include a comprehensive resume. If they were nominated as the creator or the driving force behind the innovation, you could include a synopsis of the nominee's discoveries, research contributions, and technology developments. If they were nominated for leading team accomplishments, a synopsis of the material contributions made and how they enabled the advancement of the innovation. And then a summary of education, employment, honors, and accomplishments, including recognition or awards from the nominee's employee. Next is the bibliography. For the academic awards, we ask that you share a bibliography that includes a separate list and electronic PDFs of the 5 most important research publications that were driven by the nominee. So in this list, please include the digital object identifier number and a URL to an online version of the documents. And we'll also ask that the PDFs be uploaded. For technology innovation, include a list of the most important research publications, industrial reports, patents, or descriptions of contributions to company innovations as attested by company executives. The committee isn't counting publications, and they're really looking for quality, not quantity. And the 5 publications should be from primary literature and not reviews. The research that was done as a faculty member will be weighted more heavily than that done as postdoc. And lastly, the nomination packet will need to include 3 letters of support from outside the nominee's current institution or organization. These should be no longer than 2 pages. And like Dr. Goodell mentioned, they play a large influence on the committee. Please select letter writers that can speak well to the impact that the nominee has had on their field. And as far as submission goes, they'll be submitted either directly to TAMEST via email, or they can be requested within the nomination form. If they are requested through the nomination form, you'll be able to write a personalized email to them, and they will be able to upload the letter directly to the website. So the nomination form is linked on the TAMEST website, emails, and in the nomination guide. We also have a frequently asked questions document with answers to many questions that we have received over the years. And we're continually updating the FAQ as new questions come in. So it's a pretty helpful resource when you're creating your nomination. And you can also feel free to reach out to me with any questions. My contact information will be on the last slide. Okay. Now we are at the Q&A portion. So please use the Zoom box Q&A to submit your questions. And if you'd like to ask a question verbally, you can use the raise hand function and we will call on you. See, there were already some questions answered in the chat. So somebody was asking about the eligibility criteria. So it is by calendar year at the time of nomination. So if you started in calendar year 2010, then you will be eligible. And let's see. Yes, the window cannot be extended. It's pretty firm on 15 years or 25 years for technology innovation. Let's see, we have a new question. Dr. Goodell, I'll pass this one to you. We have a question if there's any advice you can give to create the most competitive application possible.
It's a great question. I think it's depending on who the nomination is coming from. Like if you are the nominee and you're trying to prepare your application, your materials, helping the person who's nominating you, I think you really have to think deeply about how your work has impacted the field more broadly. And personally, I find, especially when one is younger, it's hard to convey that very, very clearly. I found it difficult to convey it, and sometimes I still find it difficult to convey that. And so you really have to think about that and express it as concisely as possible. So I would say the two most important things in the application are that 50-word summary. So this person has discovered X, Y, Z, and this is important because of blah, 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 and it has impacted the field more broadly, or has changed practice, or all these other people have started working on the problem. So really conveying what the work is that the nominee should be recognized for and how that's had broader impact. So that's super important, that 50-word summary. The 250-word summary is a little bit more extended version of that, and it helps. And then the letters themselves. So thinking about who can write a letter, who can really convey the broader importance of the discoveries that were made. And for a nominee, there might be one major discovery in your 15 years. You might have had just one thing that really stands out. You might have had multiple ones, but really think about how, that you can talk about how both two discoveries made an impact broadly, but there may be one that's even more important. So it really is about scientific impact on the field.
Thank you. And then we had another question come in, Dr. Goodell, if you want to answer this one as well. It's just asking to expand on the support letters and if the weight is higher from non-direct collaborators.
The weight is definitely higher for non-direct collaborators. What we really want is a broader assessment in the field of how that work has had an impact. And so if it's a collaborator might have, some interest in seeing your nomination go forward. So it's kind of seen a little bit as a conflict of interest. Similarly, a former mentor is somewhat conflicted. So you really have to identify people that are within your field, hopefully somewhat broad, and who can really speak to the impact that your work has had on the field.
Thanks. We have a question asking if the award goes to the individual or their academic institution. And it does go to the individual, so it's an honorarium that is presented directly to the recipient.
One more word I'll say while we're waiting for other questions about the letters is that most of the nominees at this point will have been put up for tenure. And the kind of people that are letter writers for tenure, for those kinds of things, are usually appropriate to think about when our tenure writers, our people who write letters for tenure are generally not our former mentors, not close collaborators. They're people in institutions outside of usually outside of Texas, sometimes internationally. And those are the kind of letters that we're looking for that are more really targeted towards the award.
Right, and then we have another question about the 2-year minimum conducting research in Texas. So we're asking at the time of application, so 2 years from the time calendar year 2025.
Do you have an answer for that? How do we measure that, Stephanie?
Oh, yes, sorry, that is my answer. So so just 2 years from so
calendar years, right.
2023. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll say that, the spirit of the award is that it's work done in Texas. Obviously, it doesn't have to be. There will be people who've moved to Texas and done their impactful work beforehand. But the committees really are looking for something that was done as an independent investigator. You might have had an amazing, impactful paper as a postdoctoral fellow or as a graduate student. And it's not that those accomplishments are ignored, but our one supervisor can be credited sometimes for the work done in training. So I think it's important that there be impactful work done after training. If the work that's most impactful was really done during training, then the letter writers may be able to play a role in sort of saying how the nominee as a student or a postdoc really drove that project independently so that it's not really credited solely on their supervisor.
Then I'll just reiterate again, there's the question about 15 years from the first full-time appointment, and that's from the calendar year 2010 or from calendar year 2000. So if you started in 2010 for the academic awards, then you will be eligible this year. And if you started in 2000 for technology innovation, then you will be eligible. There's another question. The date is January 2025. Yes, in regards to the 2 years, so it's just at calendar year 2025. So you've been there for 2 years. So it would be the 2023 that you started work in Texas. I hope that answers that. Is there a limit to the number of nominees an individual institution or organization can nominate each year? Peggy, do you want to speak to that?
I don't think there's any limit. The dean can nominate 5 different people, or you can have different department chairs. It really doesn't matter how many nominations.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we do encourage the strongest nominations, but there's not a specific limit for each institution.
Right. It doesn't really help if you flood the zone, right? So an institution should make an effort to find really the most qualified candidates.
Are there any other questions?
I mean, maybe if there's no other questions for a moment, I can address a little bit the medicine to biology categories. There's often questions about those. When I gave my introduction, I gave the example of bioengineering, and people can fall into 2 different categories for a really nice bioengineering contribution. However, people often also have questions for whether they should be nominated to the medicine category or the biological sciences category. And again, I would say the guiding principle was where has that work had the biggest impact? But generally, you can say that the biological science is more basic sciences, and the the medicine can be fundamental basic science, but that has more immediate or obvious translational relevance. And so there will be more MDs in that category, but there will be PhDs who happen to be working on something that's biomedically relevant. Whereas the biological sciences, it could be somebody like that, but it might be other people who are working on something really of broad fundamental importance, even in bacteria or in plants or in organisms that might not have such immediate, obvious biomedical relevance. And also people have switched categories from year to year on occasion. So we've had individuals nominated to the medicine category, and then after some of these discussions got nominated to the biology category, biological sciences category, and then happened to win. And similar with biomedical engineering projects. So I would say if a nominee, a highly qualified nominee, doesn't make it, one can really think about whether that's the best category. And instead of just allowing the nomination to roll over in the same category, think about how to tweak it and whether maybe another category would be more ideal.
Thank you. We had one more question. To clarify, can the major discovery and contribution have taken place before work in Texas as long as they have been doing research in Texas for the last 2 calendar years?
Absolutely. Yep. And I would say that the committees don't really have a bias for or against anything like that. I think as long as the individual is qualifying according to the criteria that TAMEST has set, they will be considered fairly and equally compared to all the other candidates.
All right. Well, unless we have any other questions, oh, we got another one. For the academic-oriented category, can the recommendation letters be from industry to demonstrate the impact to applications?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Absolutely. Yep.
I agree. It just needs to be from outside of your current institution or organization.
Yeah. I will say the stature of the letter writers does have some level of influence. So a good letter, I think, is specific. Some people want a letter from a famous person, and that famous person may or may not know the work, and they just ask the famous person to write the letter, a Nobel Prize winner, or it could be anybody. And I would say that a person who has good solid stature but can write a really meaningful letter that really speaks to the impact is much more valuable than a thin letter from a very famous person. But the stature of the letter writer does have some impact as well. And so if the letter is coming from somebody in industry, then it should be clear that either that individual or that company or similar has some weight, to discuss what the impact was of that discovery. I hope that's clear.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for attending today's session, and to Dr. Goodell for leading the session. We hope you found this information helpful. We will have video and slides of the session posted on the TAMEST website and included in a follow-up email. And there will be a survey available at the end of the session for attendees to submit feedback. We'd also like to invite you to join us in February for our TAMEST annual conference. The theme of the conference is Confronting Climate Change. It'll take place February 2nd through 4th, 2026 at the Kimpton Santa Hotel in San Antonio. And the 2026 O'Donnell Awards recipients will present their research on stage during the conference, and we will celebrate their awards with a ceremony and dinner. The event is open to all in the research community, and you can learn more on our website. Thank you again. As a reminder, the deadline for submission is April 30th, 2025 at 6 p.m. If you have any questions or need further information, please contact me at the information on the screen. That concludes today's session. Thank you so much for joining us.